democracy. It is highly questionable why some voting officials might want to put paper over the windows, why they might want to make people observe with binoculars. Obviously, this is not going to facilitate seeing a ballot, and the president is right when he talks about Detroit, when he talks about Philadelphia. One internet search will show that there has been a history in those cities in the past of corruption, particularly when it comes to city finances and in some cases elections of public police officials, etc. So I'm not going to go through all the cases. People can do their research, but I think as journalists, we have to let the facts stand and let Americans, let the world decide what they want to believe. But in terms of putting forward evidence, there has been evidence put forward. Whether or not people think it's plentiful, whether or not they accept that evidence, that is for our viewers and voters to decide.
Kimberly Halkett, you make some good points. Kimberly Halkett there for us in Washington. No doubt we'll be speaking to you again. Well, ballot counting in Pennsylvania and Georgia is still going on, and has Democratic candidate Joe Biden closing the gap on Trump's early lead there. While in the West, Biden is clinging to a slim lead in Nevada in the past couple of hours. Biden himself has spoken and said no doubt he will defeat Trump, but has urged patience as the final votes are tallied. Let's go to our correspondent Mike Hanna, who is in Biden's home state of Delaware. He joins us from Wilmington. So we did hear from Biden about an hour or so ago, and he set a rather different tone from Trump, who we've just heard from.
Well, the polar opposite of what we've just heard, Joe Biden making very clear that he wants every vote to be counted. The Americans cast their votes and have a right to have their vote recorded in the ultimate result, saying too that everybody's got to be patient and wait for that result to happen. Biden adopting a tone of calm, attempting as well to adopt a tone of unity. Once again, not pointing fingers in any direction, just once again maintaining an even balance as he's been demanding from his campaign. Not to claim victory despite the fact that most projections have him ahead, but not to get ahead of the fact, to wait until all the results are in and counted. This is what Joe Biden had to say.
Each ballot must be counted, and that's what we're going to see going through now. And that's how it should be. Democracy is sometimes messy. It sometimes requires a little patience as well. But that patience has been rewarded now for more than 240 years with a system of governance that's been the envy of the world. And we continue to feel, Senator and I, we continue to feel very good about where things stand. We have no doubt that when the count is finished, Senator Harris and I will be declared the winners. So, I ask everyone to stay calm, all people to stay calm. The process is working.
Joe Biden as well, framing this whole process in a much wider context. Biden insisting it's not just about this election. This election is part of a chain of democracy, a concept of democracy that has existed for centuries within this country and must not be seen outside that context. Biden attempting to play down this bitterness of the partisan divide that has intensified over the past 4 years, also attempting to stay away from inflammatory charges such as the fact that illegal votes are being counted or that votes are suddenly being found. President Trump earlier ignoring the fact that these are not votes that are simply being found. These are votes that were delivered according to the laws in any particular state. The fact that votes are being counted on the election date, or that some may be arriving on the election date because before that election, is not a question of the votes suddenly being found, as the president attempted
state. Their websites have been really slow. I think there's so many people going on that issue to the press conference that you said, just look at there. Those will be the numbers. But we're getting better numbers from the New York Times and the Associated Press. After all, they've been doing this quite a while. And according to the Associated Press, U.S. President Donald Trump now leads in Pennsylvania by just 64,000 votes. The New York Times says it's 74,000. So what you have seen from election night, where he was ahead by 700,000 votes, is a steady decline in that number every hour that passes. They said that they are going to be counting late into the night with the hopes that they can get some sort of number here in Pennsylvania, because again, this is it. This is the big prize. It doesn't seem possible that President Trump can get another term without Pennsylvania. That's highly unlikely of that anyway. And Joe Biden, this would be it. This would put him way over the 270 he needs to win, to be able to say he's won the presidency. So this is a big deal. The Biden campaign feels very confident because they're looking at how many hundreds of thousands of ballots still are to come in. And each time that they're coming in mostly from these centers that are city centers that tend to go Democratic. And so they're getting between 70 and 80% of those votes. So just do basic math, and I know journalists not all that good at math or journalists, but it does appear that in Pennsylvania, Joe Biden has the edge, and his supporters here clearly feel that, and they are literally partying in the street.
Okay, Patty Cohen there for us in Philadelphia with the very latest. Georgia has become the unexpected toss-up for Donald Trump, with Joe Biden closing in on his lead. There are fewer than 4,000 votes left to be counted. Andy Gallagher has the latest in the race from Georgia.
Well, look, Georgia is one of those states that not many people thought was even going to be at play in this presidential election, but here we are. We have seen that state as a Republican state for decades. The last Democratic presidential nominee that won there was Bill Clinton back in 1992. But as these mail-in ballots slowly come in, you can see the gap between Biden and Trump narrowing all the time as those votes come in. And what is important is where those votes are coming from. They're coming counter-significantly Democratic. And with 16 electoral college votes in the state of Georgia, the states really couldn't be higher. The gap between these two candidates couldn't be narrower, and the officials in the state of Georgia say they may be counting some of those absentee ballots into Friday. So a great deal at stake with the state of Georgia, something no one thought was going to be in play, but here we are.
Election workers in Georgia say it's unclear how much longer it'll take to go through all the ballots.
We anticipate having the count quote-unquote done when the legal deadline for certification is, which is going to be 10 days after the election. That's when we're done, because there are ballots that are still coming in, there are ballots to be cured, there are ballots that are provisionals that are to be verified. So we can't know how long the process will take. We hope to have clarity on the outcome of these elections as soon as possible. However, when you have so many important elections in the state being so close, done is a very relative term at this point. We're trying to get all the legal votes counted accurately so we can get the right results to make sure that everybody's vote is reflected properly.
Well, two of the other states we are watching closely are Arizona and Nevada. Rob Reynolds joins us live now from Los Angeles, where he is covering those states. Bring us up to date with those states. Where are we in terms of counting?
Well, in Nevada, Joe Biden's lead over Donald Trump has increased now to more than 10,000 votes. The Nevada Secretary of State says 190,000 ballots remain to be counted. The vast majority of those, 90% of those, in fact, come from Clark County. Now, Clark County is the population center of Nevada. It's where Las Vegas is located, and several other cities. So that is where the majority of these mail-in ballots yet to be counted are coming from. And like many other cities around the country, as we see in Philadelphia, Georgia, Detroit, and so forth, city dwellers tend to vote Democratic. So many of these votes are believed to be Biden votes. The Trump campaign has filed a suit to stop the count, alleging without much evidence that there are irregularities, including ballots being cast on behalf of people who are dead or who have left the state of Nevada. The Clark County Registrar, Joe Gloria, said in a news briefing earlier today He's not aware of any improper ballots being processed. Nevada has come in for some criticism over the slowness of its counting process, but Gloria said that speed is not their objective. Their objective is accuracy and counting all the legitimate votes. Many legal analysts have opined that President Trump's legal challenges are, in many cases, lack a lot of merit. And another thing to point out here, as Andy was just alluding to, or as the Pennsylvania election official was alluding to, there is a very decentralized system in the United States for counting votes, and every state has its own rules. For example, here in California, the votes, if they are mail-in, have to be stamped and postmarked, stamped received by the end of election day. And then it's not until November 17th that those votes can no longer be counted. There are similar deadlines in other states. Now, moving on and that's by law. Those are state laws, so it's not something that's been invented for the election of 2020. Moving on to Arizona now, where the vote totals are tightening a bit in Trump's favor, but still, as of today, Trump trails by Arizona by 68,000 votes. About 88% of the votes have been counted, but the counting continues. We hope to get some new numbers out of Arizona later today, maybe within an hour or two. The Arizona Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs, says that there are somewhere between 400 and 450,000 ballots yet to be tabulated. Most of those come, again, from the urban center, from the city of Phoenix and the surrounding suburbs. She says that Hobbs says the bulk of those ballots are expected to be counted by the weekend. So the final vote tally is still some days away in these states.
Rob Reynolds there for us in Los Angeles. Many thanks. Let's get some other news now. The US has seen a record jump in new coronavirus infections a day after the presidential election. More than 102,000 cases were confirmed on Wednesday, exceeding the record set last Friday. And the number of COVID-19 patients in hospitals has reached 50,000, the highest in nearly 3 months. An average 850 people die from coronavirus a day. That's up from 700 a month ago. A new nationwide lockdown has come into effect in England as it struggles to curb a second wave of coronavirus. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says it will be lifted automatically in the next 4 weeks. On Wednesday night, large crowds were seen gathered in London with very little social distancing. Eve Barker has the latest.
There is a very different atmosphere to this second lockdown. The streets in central London are reasonably busy and there are people out and about. Perhaps this time around, people are less afraid of the unknown. And many workplaces, of course, have adapted to these changing times, meaning that people are still going out to their offices. Also, schools, universities and nurseries remain open. The streets were busy during the school run this morning, but there are big concerns about the retail and hospitality sector. We're on the Strand in central London. Many shops here are closed. There's also been an announcement of 3,500 job cuts in one of the big supermarkets, Sainsbury's, and its associated brand Argos. Of course, there have been concerns about the high street even before the pandemic, deep concerns about what kind of lasting impact this second lockdown would have. And for some stores, the first lockdown was already too much, forced to close their doors then. Concerns there could well be casualties this second time round. The government, though, says that there is support available. The furlough scheme that pays 80% of the salaries of workers temporarily will be extended. And also the Bank of England has announced that it's injecting $195 billion into the economy. The worries, of course, about how long the government can continue insulating the economy in these unpredictable and changing times.
The Prime Minister of Greece has ordered a nationwide lockdown due to take effect from Sunday. Yakos Mitsotakis spoke at a news conference earlier with the government's infectious disease expert. He said the latest measures will be in place over the course of 3 weeks. They'll be as strict as the first lockdown, except this time only primary schools and kindergartens will remain open. The head of Serbia's Orthodox Church has tested positive for coronavirus days after leading a large funeral for a bishop who was also infected. The church says the 90-year-old patriarch Irenei is not showing symptoms and was taken to hospital as a precaution. He led a crowded service for the church's most senior cleric in Montenegro. Kosovo's President Hashim Thaçi has resigned to face war crime charges at The Hague. He's accused of committing murder and torture during the fight for independence from Serbia in the 1990s. Barbara Ngopa reports.
Hashim Thaçi, along with 9 other former rebel leaders, are accused of murdering nearly 100 people, including political opponents. The alleged crimes relate to the period when Thaçi was a top figure of the Kosovo Liberation Army, or the KLA. The group fought for independence from Serbia during the 1998 to 1999 Kosovo War. Thaçi says he's resigned to face trial over his role in the conflict and to shield his country from disrepute.
As I promised, I would not allow the President of the Republic of Kosovo to go to court. That is why, to protect the integrity of the presidency of Kosovo, of the state of Kosovo, and the people, and respecting the partnership of the international community, I am resigning from the post of the President of Kosovo.
More than 10,000 people were killed during the Kosovo War, and thousands more were forced from their homes. The fighting ended after a 78-day NATO air bombardment against Serbian forces. Serbian leaders face trials for war crimes at a special international criminal court for the former Yugoslavia, but analysts say crimes were committed on both sides.
This somehow comes at the end of this struggle, and of course I was struggling with its recent part of accepting socially that while Kosovo has been the victim of the Milosevic-Serbia policy in the 90s, there have also been committed some crimes.
A special court at The Hague has been preparing to try suspected Kosovo war criminals since 2015. Many top Kosovo politicians who came up through the KLA have been transferred to stand trial. Hashim Thaçi's prosecution may appease people who believe justice has not been done in the decades since the war. But his supporters call Thaçi a hero and say his indictment is unfair. Barbara Ngopa, Al Jazeera.
Austria's leaders say they need better laws to monitor potential attackers in the future. The call comes after an ISIL sympathizer claimed responsibility for Monday's deadly shooting. Chancellor Sebastian Kurz admitted the country does not have the legal means to prevent future attacks. It was revealed on Wednesday that officials fumbled intelligence on the gunman who killed 4 people and wounded 20 others.
One can see that all are to be linked to the radical Islamist milieu. All of them in differing constellations were part of observations and measures by the domestic intelligence service. That's why we had deep knowledge of these people, and once we had the identity of the perpetrator, we were able to quickly turn to these people.
The French president has announced strict security measures at the country's border with Spain after 3 people were stabbed to death at a church in Nice last week. Emmanuel Macron says he'll be doubling the police force to 4,800 officers in a bid to tackle illegal immigration. The government raised its security alert status to the highest level following a series of recent attacks. 73 Palestinians, including 41 children, have been left homeless after Israeli forces demolished most of their village in the occupied West Bank. Israeli bulldozers destroyed 76 structures in the Bedouin settlement of Kibbeh Houza in the Jordan Valley. They said the settlements were illegal. The UN has condemned Israel, describing the incident as the single largest demolition in a decade, and says more than 850 Palestinians have been made homeless this year after their homes were flattened. Ethiopia's northern Tigray region has accused federal troops of bombing locations around its capital in a bid to force it into submission. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed sent soldiers there and declared a state of emergency after after the ruling TPLF party attacked federal troops. The army in Addis Ababa says it's been forced into an unexpected and aimless war. Well, tensions grew in September after the TPLF held regional elections despite a government postponement due to COVID-19. Tigray's rulers say there was a power grab by the Prime Minister. The death toll from Tropical Storm Eta has climbed to almost 70 as it pulls away from Central America. This was the scene in Honduras where the president reported shocking devastation. Eta left homes and streets submerged and triggered mudslides across the region. It's one of the fiercest storms to hit Central America in recent years. This is Al Jazeera. These are the top stories. US President Donald Trump is claiming that if legal votes were counted, he'd win the elections. At a White House news conference, he said legal challenges filed by his campaign may end up in the Supreme Court.
If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us. If you count the votes that came in late, we're looking at them very strongly. A lot of votes came in late. I've already decisively won many critical states.
US Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden is urging people to be patient as the final votes from Tuesday's election continue to be counted. He's closing the gap on Donald Trump in Pennsylvania and Georgia and says he is confident of becoming the next president.
Each ballot must be counted. And that's what we're going to see going through now. And that's how it should be. Democracy is sometimes messy. It sometimes requires a little patience as well. But that patience has been rewarded now for more than 240 years with a system of governance. And that's been the envy of the world. We continue to feel, Senator and I, we continue to feel very good about where things stand. We have no doubt that when the count is finished, Senator Harris and I will declare the winners. So, I ask everyone to stay calm, all people to stay calm. The process is working.
The US has seen a record jump in new coronavirus infections a day after the presidential election. More than 100,000 cases were confirmed on Wednesday, exceeding the record set last Friday. A new nationwide lockdown has come into effect in England as it struggles to curb a second wave of coronavirus infections. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says it will be lifted automatically in the next 4 weeks. Those are the headlines. News continues here in Al Jazeera to Inside Stories. Stay with us.
Al Jazeera, wherever you are.
The United States of America. As the presidential election result hangs in the balance, supporters of Donald Trump and Joe Biden are growing impatient. Regardless of who wins, can Americans heal their divided nation? This is Inside states where only Trump supporters in some states want the count to stop. In Arizona, police had to block the entrance to a counting centre when protesters carrying bombs gathered outside. A survey for US media found the election was wide in central divisions. People largely voted along the same political lines as 2016.
It really does seem like people live in two different realities, given like the news they consume and who they surround themselves with. So I'm not that surprised that a lot of people decided to vote again for a president who's brought us to where we are.
We want everyone to have the same rights and the same opportunities, and we see that in an America that Biden and Harris are both running together.
No matter if Trump win or Biden win, we still gonna have people pulling their guns out on black men because they're scared of them because of their color, because they're scared of them because of what they have.
I think we should have an answer by now. I don't understand why it's taking so long, and I think there's going to be trouble either way. Someone is not going to be happy about it.
Let's bring in our guest. Joteka Edie is a political strategist and former senior advisor to the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. She joins us from Washington, D.C. Joining us from Western Virginia is conservative political strategist Rita Shah, and also in Washington, D.C., Elizabeth Anker, Associate Professor of American Studies and Political Science at George Washington University. A welcome to each of you. I want to begin in Washington, D.C. With Joteka Edie. Let's talk about the divide within the US now. It's not a daily political divide anymore. It seems to be much more ideological than that. And it seems to be rooted in police violence, in racism. It seems to be rooted in the economy and the handling of the coronavirus crisis. Would you suggest that this is the most divisive that you've seen in American society?
Well, as a student of political science and history, I do believe that there have been times